And welcome to the 7th podcast of Jono Talks. Today we have Jude Joseph in the studio. Jude is a lead singer, guitarist, and main songwriter in an anarcho-punk band. Welcome to the podcast, Jude.
Thanks for having me.
All good, Jude. And first of all, what is anarcho-punk? I've never heard of it before.
Well, anarcho-punk, it's basically a sort of subgenre of punk music where everything is really sort of about anarchy. You know, it's addressing political issues from an anarchist perspective and things like that.
What specifically are we talking about? Is it just generally motivated, or is it something specific?
It depends on the band and the song. Like, I tend to be quite general and specific with different songs I write. So a lot of it will be about, you know, you'll get a lot of anti-police sentiment, or, you know, when police violence happens, there'll be a lot of songs about that sort of thing. You know, anti-government, all that sort of thing.
So, and what are your lyrics inspired by? Do you try and draw from different artists from an anarcho-punk perspective, or can you draw inspiration from other genres?
I think you can do it from any genre, really. Like,
yeah.
Obviously, when I write my lyrics, it's very influenced by the anarcho-punk bands, and I, you know, draw, like, that's where a lot of my beliefs came from as well, from listening to those sorts of bands and sort of hearing what they had to say. But
yeah,
I think in terms of the music, I think good punk music in general is able to have a lot of different influences and be quite flexible.
But how did you first hear about the genre itself? Was it just through the radio, or?
No, you wouldn't really hear any of it on the radio.
Yeah, that's what I'm just curious. Yeah.
No, well, see, the first time I ever really delved into politics at all was when I bought a Rage Against the Machine CD in Year 9. And then through that, I think I just sort of started developing my ideas, and then my music taste followed my ideas. And so it slowly got into the heavier and heavier sort of stuff in terms of lyrics. So I started out listening to The Clash, the Sex Pistols, all of the
some of the classics, yeah.
And then, I don't know, as you go through it, like with anything, you find more and more stuff. And I ended up listening to these bands like Choking Victim, Leftover Crack, Conflict. Their lyrics are just really, really hard-hitting and really direct. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what kind of sound do anarcho-punk bands adopt? Is it kind of metal-based, or a bit softer than that?
It'd be similar to metal, but it's not quite like metal, but it's not softer either. Like, it's generally, you'll find them having a really sort of hardcore, gritty sound, just really fast, really, like, you can't understand the lyrics unless you read them, which is kind of funny because the lyrics are the main thing, but...
Yeah.
Just really hard-hitting, heavy, grinding sort of stuff. But it can also draw influence from other things, like those bands I mentioned before, Choking Victim, Leftover Crack. There's a lot of, you know, ska inspiration and such, because they came about in the 90s, early 2000s. And so, I don't know. The genre itself isn't really much of a musical subgenre as much as it's punk music, and just the lyrics have specific direction. So they can really sound like anything.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any kind of political beliefs that you draw upon when you write your lyrics?
Yeah. Most of the time when I write, it's when I start feeling really angry about issues. You know, if I hear about a police shooting in the news, or about, like, you know, a racist neo-Nazi march in the city, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or when I go to a rally and see them, you know, their swastikas tattooed on them and such, and I just get really angry and I write something about it.
Did you go there? Did you go to the rally?
I went to the one in Melton.
That's
the first one I've been to, and there haven't really been any since then that I've been able to go to. But, yeah, they're really funny because the police tend to be the ones that start the violence, not the protesters.
Yeah, see, I had Adam Jacobs on the podcast a while back, or a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about with comedy how he drew inspiration just from daily events that you witness, that you observe. Is observation a key skill when it comes to your type of music that you want to create?
Yeah, I'd say so, but I think in a different way. Obviously, you can see stand-up comedians, they just draw from things they've seen and experiences they have. I think with this sort of thing, it's more of a case of you observe what's happening in the news, what you hear on the radio, what you see when you go to, like, these sorts of rallies and political events. And so it's still inspired by observation, but more like, you know, large-scale observation.
Yeah, opinion-driven. Yeah. So is that something you want to have in your music? Something that's biased? Do you intend to be biased with your songs?
That's a good question. Pretty much, yeah. But obviously, well, no one thinks they're biased when they have their beliefs, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, that's a really sort of strange area to be in. Personally, I think everything that I'm saying is quite factual, but obviously not everyone would agree with that. So I don't know, but yeah, there's definitely bias. Like, it's definitely saying one exact issue. Like,
Then if there's how do you intend for your music in particular to appeal to audiences who don't agree with you? What kind of things do you want them to see in new music, even though they may not agree with you?
Well, yeah, I think there are a lot of people who will listen to music just because they enjoy the music. So I think we could appeal to people just off, people who appreciate punk music or
just the tune itself.
Yeah. But generally, like, I am sort of gearing my stuff towards a specific political agenda as well. So I don't really plan on having too many people who disagree with me listening to the stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because when I listen to music in general, sometimes the lyrics themselves, they become obsolete in the sense that, you kind of just lose yourself in the sound of it, the instruments and whatnot. But with your anarcho-punk music, I would believe that the lyrics would be quite important.
Yeah, that really is. Oh, yeah, generally it's the key thing. I think my band tends to be a bit more diverse musically. So there are some songs I think you could sort of tune out the lyrics, but I think generally, yeah, the lyrics are the focal point. There's not really much to hear besides that, except for some thrashing guitars and drums.
No. But so are you? So have you been involved in, like, what band are you solo artist, or because you've been involved with group bands before, haven't you?
Yeah. At the moment, I've got a solo project going that is sort of on the side. Like, I don't really have too much focus on it at the moment, but that's what I've been doing most recently, just because the band had a hiatus after Year 12 exams last year.
Yeah.
There's not really much money or time to rehearse, but we're starting to get back into it. But yeah, it's funny, the punk band started as a grunge band in year 10, I think, and it was called Dirt Leaf. We didn't do anything at all, literally nothing, and then we transformed into a punk band, I don't remember why, and it was called Rock Cult Filth, named after a Sex Pistols headline from England in, like, the 70s, where...
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, a couple of them, like, they played... what was it? They appeared on an evening show, and they swore, and it caused, like, outrage in the country, and there was a headline that was like TV fury over rock cult filth, and I was like, I like that phrase. I'm taking it.
Interesting. What was that? How was that? Was that intentionally rude? From the Sex Pistols? Yeah.
Well, like back in the 70s, I don't think there was very much tolerance for the punk scene. I think everyone who wasn't a part of it was just absolutely hated it, so there wasn't really much attempt to be tactful when talking about it. So,
is that something you've noticed now, that the tolerance level for punk music is slowly disseminating? Like, there's not a lot of criticism that goes towards it now as compared to the 70s?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think society's become a lot more tolerant of it, which is kind of interesting, because the entire point originated as a way to, sort of diss society. And so I feel like, in a way, punk should be trying harder to stay abrasive, but at the same time, people's minds are opening. You never really know what they're going to accept next, and I generally don't get too many scowls from people on the street when I've got a mohawk or anything like that, except for, the occasional middle-aged mother. And, but usually the only reactions I get if I go out with the mohawk up and, my patches and all that sort of thing are either little kids or old people who really love it. You don't really get too much negativity. I would, the amount of times I've had, some little girl tell me that I look really cool, or some old lady, starting to ask me all these questions about it. It's really, it's surprising. I expected to get a lot more negativity.
Yeah, because when I saw you today, I was just like, I hadn't noticed your new haircut, and I was like, yeah, that's awesome. So was that inspired by your genre of music?
The mohawk and the appearance? Yeah, definitely.
It was? Yeah.
It's sort of like a ebb and flow sort of thing, not ebb and flow, give and take. Like, as you're getting more and more into the music, you get more and more into the scene. And so, as I listened to more punk music, I adopted more punk values. As I adopted more punk values, I sort of started dressing that way.
Do artists have your type of hairstyle in that band area?
Actually,
did you copy it from anyone?
No, not really. Like, it's a well-established sort of trademark of, not this, but when it's properly spiked up. You generally see it quite a lot.
In that genre.
Scene.
Yeah.
But it's usually the fans, not the artists who have it.
Oh, okay.
One thing I noticed early was if you look at all the great punk bands of like the era, not many of them have actual mohawks and like studded jackets or anything like that. They just, shaved heads, loose clothes, because, they're on the stage jumping all over the place. They haven't really got much room to be dressing up. But, there are only a couple of bands I can think of, like the Casualties, who actually had, mohawks and traditional punk image when they were performing.
Out of interest, have you read The Catcher in the Rye before?
Yes.
Would you relate, because that was about kind of a teenager rebelling against society, and it's quite obviously a popular book. I'm sure many of the listeners have read it. Is that kind of, would you say that's kind of similar to anarcho-punk music, that sentiment that, we're against society and that I'm fighting for my own beliefs?
I don't think it'd be anarcho-punk as much as punk in general.
Yeah.
Like, anarcho-punk is a lot more focused on a bit more specific sort of stuff, police, government, banks, such and such. Whereas punk in general as a movement was very much, I think it really channels Catcher in the Rye and Holden Caulfield. They're really sort of like, I'm against society, do everything you can to, not be a part of it.
Yeah, to voice your concerns about it through music.
Yeah, exactly.
And so what bands in particular, do you try and copy any templates of music from any artist, or is your music purely unique?
Well, I don't think anyone's music is purely unique anymore. I think it's just too much has been done. It's really hard to be your own sort of person. I try and be as original as possible. I try and avoid, really generic basic chord progressions or anything like that, but I think it's pretty hard to actually be purely unique. I don't try and copy any templates, but I think it just naturally happens when you write, especially with punk music. You'll just end up writing, verse, chorus, verse, bridge, outro, and that's pretty generic. But yeah, we try and sort of shy away from that, but it always sort of bleeds in somehow.
Is it easy to create different music?
I think it's easy enough once you've sort of practiced with it. It's a lot like anything else you practice. So when I first started writing punk music, it sort of started becoming natural. It's easy to write the lyrics because you don't really need to worry about being artistically creative, just, a bunch of F words and talk about fascism. But with the solo stuff I do, it's a lot... it became a lot more difficult, and it took me a while to get into the idea of writing, because my solo stuff isn't as political. It's a lot more personal and introspective, and so it was hard to get into it originally, but now I've sort of gotten more into it, and so I'm a bit better at writing that sort of stuff than punk music at the moment.
And that's an interesting quality, introspection. I think a lot of bands would have that. Have you heard of London Grammar? Have you heard of? No, you haven't heard of them. Well, basically, I just think in general, I think introspection would be a common quality to have in most music bands. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah. In most genres, yeah.
Because it just deals with that, you're just like reflecting on events. And so what type of events have you reflected on in your music? You mentioned the rally in Melton, was it? Yeah. What other things have inspired you to write?
There have been quite a lot of things, actually. Just generally, headlines I read and such. So one of our songs, This Is Humanity, it's it was based on just Facebook comment sections I was reading and, getting into arguments online before I realised just how pointless that is. But, people have their set minds, but it's all about, Australia. Actually, that's one of the things a lot of my songs were written about, the refugee situation. Australia's refugees, the policies on that. That inspired a lot of my stuff. But yeah, just general stuff like that. Arguments with people and just realizing how stupid some people can be when they try and argue a point.
Yeah, like they force it upon you.
And like
they don't respect. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not that their view is stupid, it's just that they obviously haven't done any research, but then they expect you to still take them seriously.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't even know what you're doing.
Is that the opposite of what you do in your music? Do you research quite a bit before you create a song?
I don't do a massive amount of research before writing the song, but I'll do research to come up with my views, and then the songs come later.
Okay.
And so I'll just sort of, when I write the song, it's pretty much just venting all of my frustration and all of that sort of thing. But yeah, to get to the viewpoint that I've got, I tend to actually research things and find out the facts.
Does Anarcho-Punk, is that becoming more popular now?
No, it was actually at its prime in about the 80s.
Okay.
And then, sort of the late 90s. It sort of had its little minor resurgence. But no, it's actually quite dead now. I'm hoping to kind of breathe some life back into the political aspect of punk music. Because at the moment, there's a lot of punk bands, but they're all quite, the lyrics are a lot more personal than back in, the 80s when it was a lot more socially charged.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the music industry now? Obviously, the landscape from the 70s and 80s until now has changed dramatically in terms of how you sell music. Because I'm just thinking, because obviously, there's the issue of people downloading music illegally. Do you plan to pursue music as a career? And if so, how will you advocate your songs? Because it's harder now, I think, with new artists coming up.
Yeah. Well, I don't really plan on pursuing it as a career, so to speak. I would like to be able to do it full-time in life. But it's so hard in any form of art to be able to maintain that without, just selling your soul and, sign on the dotted line and suddenly someone else has all the creative control and they're earning... Yeah, especially with punk music, you really can't sign to a major label because of the ideals,
Yeah, that would be a difficult... Yeah.
Yeah. You're pretty much writing songs all about how corporations are evil and then letting a corporation profit off of that. So the thing is, it's kind of actually quite a strange situation because there's Rage Against the Machine, who, if anyone for some reason hasn't heard of them, they're a rap metal group from the 90s who were all political. And they were signed to Sony. And they've copped a lot of criticism within the underground scenes because of that. And they're Sony's a corporation. You say you don't like corporations, but you're making money for them. And the guitarist, Tom Morello, he spoke out and he said, well, if our primary aim is to get a message out to new people who haven't thought about it yet, change some minds, make people think, you can't do that by only playing to audiences who already agree with you. If you stay to that underground scene, you're just playing to people you're preaching to a choir.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the only real way to get to new ears and make teach people is to get it out there, and the only real way to get it out there properly is to sign to a major label. So it's interesting. I still don't actually know exactly where I'd stand on that, but yeah.
So did Rap Machine continue with Sony throughout their entire duration, or do they switch companies?
No, I think they were with Sony for the whole thing.
What did Sony think about that? What?
Well, they didn't really seem to care at all, which is funny. I think in the end, pretty much all of them are just these mindless blobs. They just absorb the money and they don't really care what the lyrics are. They're like, well, you're still earning us money, so say what you want.
And Rap Machine, was that quite a popular band?
Yeah. They got quite a lot of fans. They've still got a lot of hits out today. Killing in the Name. Everyone knows that song when it comes on. They got very famous, and they still are. They haven't released any studio albums for 16 years, but they still got quite a lot of attention. So, yeah, signing definitely helped them.
Do you ever think about how bands such as Rap Machine would cope in this in this era of, modern music where a lot of music now is not bought at the shop, it's bought online. Have you thought about that?
Not really. Like a little bit, yeah. I've thought about the whole idea of online music services and such.
Yeah, for instance, with U2, they a band that I like, but quite different from Anarcho-Punk, obviously. They were kind of in that era where people would just buy it from the shops or whatever. But now, with U2, they actually imported their own music from an album onto like MP3 players, like iPods and stuff. They literally, you were compelled to listen to it because as soon as you plugged in your iPod, the U2 songs would just start downloading. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's, that's just one instance where a band from that era is trying to convert. They're trying to get more fans. What did you think about that specific instance? How U2 just, imported music without people's consent? What?
I didn't really have many strong feelings about it. I just thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, there was a lot of criticism, though.
Yeah, I think it was a pretty silly move, to be honest. I mean, I don't know how you'd really expect to create a fan base by forcing people to listen to your music.
Yeah, it's not... for me personally, because I like U2, I was like, yeah, this is cool. I'm getting it for free. I don't think I even paid anything for it. I think it was just imported. The whole album was just imported. I think the Apple must have paid them or something, obviously. Yeah. But that was quite unique. I didn't really expect that to happen. Is that... And have you heard of Spotify?
Yeah.
What do you think about that program?
Spotify, I haven't done a whole lot of research into it, so I can't really say for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that it's copped a lot of criticism for something about the payments. I really need to do my research into it, so I can't really say either way right now. But my drummer hates it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it's illegal. When I first heard about it, I thought it was an illegal kind of software because you could seemingly download music for free. But they pay artists, I assume, by, you can get like a membership or something. And a certain % of that will go towards the artist. And also they have advertisements after each song. For me, I can't, again, I probably need to do more research, but from my perspective, I think it's a good platform in the age of music we are in today for artists to be paid, because if we just kept on, because they can be paid through advertisements or people getting a membership, and because it's legal, it would appeal to basically everyone. Or do you think there are some faults with it?
Well, yeah, with Spotify, obviously, I really need to do more research into it, so I can't really say.
Yeah.
But
have you used it before?
No, I've never used it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No, I use either like YouTube to just listen to music, or I go out and buy CDs.
Yeah.
And vinyls, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I don't really use much online music streaming or anything like that, but yeah, I've heard a lot about it.
And on YouTube, there's a lot of artists that go through, I think it's Vivo or something, the Vivo YouTube channel. Is that where they get paid, like through like advertisements and stuff on YouTube?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Like I think online, in general, advertising
is the way to go.
On a free thing, that's what earns you the money if you're on a free platform.
Mm-hmm. And do you think now, though, that from a profit kind of sense, the most money you're going to get now is from, live concerts and everything? You think that's the way to go?
Yeah. Especially, with a genre that's probably never going to get signed to begin with. Vulture State, that's my band, Vulture State. Yeah, we're probably not going to end up really getting any situation where we'll be getting paid for our music except for through concerts, and even that probably won't be much.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty much a vow of poverty.
Is that your aim though, to eventually profit from your music?
No, not at all. Like for me, I don't really have many needs or desires to begin with. I'm quite minimalistic, so I could happily just live on pretty much nothing and just, play the music. My main goal is just to get the messages out there.
Yeah.
At least with the punk band. The solo stuff is really just for fun, but yeah.
Is that by itself something that would just keep you writing music, that your thoughts and beliefs rather than just the money?
Yeah, definitely. I don't think I'd ever end up in a position where I'd be writing just for the money of it.
Because that's quite a sad position to be in, and some artists can fall into that trap of worrying about money, but then you're changing your own music to get more money. And it's like with anything, like YouTube videos and stuff, sometimes there can be like explicit pictures and whatnot just to get a click on the video. But with your kind of thing, it's mainly just about the message embedded within it.
Yeah, definitely. Pretty much the whole thing is just about getting stuff out there. Like, even with concerts, I'd happily just play a whole lot of free concerts. That's easy to say when you haven't played a concert yet, but I think I'd be quite happy with it. I don't know about the rest of the band, but yeah.
And Vulture State, is that the band name?
Yeah.
Where did that name come from?
Well, a few months ago, actually. Not even a few. About a month ago, we changed from Rock Cult Filth because, I don't know, there was always something about that name that just told me you're never going to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Which can be good in the punk scene, but I was also just getting sick of it. So we started thinking of new band names for quite a while. And then, I don't know, as cliched as it sounds, the idea of Vulture State came in a dream.
Okay.
Like, I don't remember what was going on in the dream, but basically the context in the dream and outside of it is that we are living in a vulture state. It's a comment on capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's just a state where the rich just take what they can and all of us are just left to rot.
And so how many band members do you have in that band?
At the moment it's 4. We've got the guitarists, the vocalist and guitarist, which is me, the drummer, Lockie, and bassist, Brendan.
And so, you have 2 guitarists in the band.
At the moment, yeah.
How does, just from a mutual observer of music, I don't play music myself, but I notice in bands that, there's usually not just one guitarist, but 2. Why is that? Is one playing like the kind of like the main chords and another's doing like the notes or something?
Generally, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you open up your avenues a lot when you have 2 guitarists. Because my first band back in year 8, which was nothing, but we had 2 guitarists. So my band sort of life pretty much started with having 2 guitarists, and so that's what I knew. And when I started this band and I was the only guitarist, it became quite strange. I realised that you really don't have much room to have these really cool riffs or solos because you've always got to be laying down the chords. And so we started to get around it and chucked solos in anyway because it's punk music, you don't really need to care. But in a rock band or something like that, you kind of need 2 guitarists so that one can keep playing that what you've gotten used to hearing, the chords and such, while the other person does the riffs and stuff. Yeah, you definitely narrow yourself down a lot if you've only got one guitarist.
And with the technicalities involved, are there any types of chords that are like go-to chords for like anarcho-punk?
Not really. I think, anarcho-punk is really generally just, do stuff. So there's not really any go-to or thought putting... Oh, there's thought put into the music, but not as much. So it's generally just, you come up with a few chords and just play them. There's no real trademarks or anything like that you hear.
That's interesting. So is the sound kind of irrelevant to the actual music itself?
A little bit, but I think the sound contributes in its own way.
Yeah, like to make the theme.
Yeah, like it's nothing to hear musically. You can't really go to it and do like a instrumental analysis. But it definitely helps. When you're hearing this song and the lyrics are just full on, inciting you to rebel, and the music's just that really hard and fast thing. It can really help get you sort of pumped up. And Conflict, especially, that's a band from the 80s from Britain. Mm-hmm. And when you listen to their music, if you agree with them anyway, the lyrics you can't really understand, and the instruments are just going absolutely mental. But when you read the lyrics, you really, I don't know, for me anyway, it just makes me want to, like, you know, get up and, you know, do something. Which I don't think would be the same if the music wasn't in there. If it was something else, it wouldn't really work as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it has its own unique sort of purpose, but just not really the same sort of purpose as in other genres.
Mm-hmm. So with the band dynamic that you're in, Vulture State, sorry, was that the band name? Yeah, I got it right. Yeah, all good. So is there kind of like a lead guitarist or anything?
Yeah, that's Josh at the moment. I was the lead guitarist for most of our career, and yeah, he's joined up. We haven't really had much time to practice with him yet, but he's a good guitarist, so good things should come of that.
Mm-hmm. And with the role of a lead guitarist, what's the other guitarist called?
The rhythm guitarist.
The rhythm
usually.
guitarist, and what does that role involve? I assume that's your role now.
Yeah, at the moment.
So what exactly? When you're working as a band to create new songs, how does the process work?
Well, when we write our songs, it's we've got quite a formula going on at the moment where I write the lyrics. I'll either also write, you know, the chords and stuff and lay down the basic sound of the song. Bring it to the rehearsal. Lockie will put down his drum beat. Brendan will figure out a bass riff. He's pretty good at that. And if I haven't written the music, Brendan's usually got some bass riff up his sleeve to pull out, and it just happens to click. It's really unique. I think it's actually a lot easier to have for a band to have its own unique sound. I think it's easier than it seems, because all you need to do is, in my opinion anyway, give each member, you know, the chance to contribute what they've got to contribute. So I think too many people get pigeonholed by the genre they want to play. Yeah. And they'll end up sort of blocking out other things. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, if I wanted to say this is a punk band, we're playing punk music, and, you know, Lockie starts playing something that sounds a bit closer to jazz, I could easily tell him, don't do that, because this is a punk band. But I think by letting him do that, and, you know, just going with it and seeing what happens, and, you know, Brendan will write like a riff that sounds more like a reggae riff than a punk riff, you end up with some really unique sounds, which I think is what you want. So I think, yeah, it's best to just go with what each member has to bring to the table. Mm-hmm.
And do you think, even though in your band that individuality is quite important when writing music?
It can be, yeah. But sometimes we end up just writing songs by, you know, just Lockie starts playing a drum beat, Brendan plays a bass riff over it, you know, we'll play some chords, and that gives us something, and that can sound quite, you know, copycat. But yeah, I think there are just so many different ways to write songs. Sometimes the individuality is important, but sometimes, yeah, you can get somewhere even if you're doing something exactly the same as someone else. You can end up branching off it and ending up with something different. Yeah.
What do you think about egos in a band? Like, it often comes up mainly with any band, really. You know, sometimes you have a personality which, you know, doesn't quite fit the group, and there can be, like, uproar, and, you know the band Oasis?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the lead singer, was it Noel Gallagher? Liam Gallagher, sorry. Yeah. So the brothers, or just a band in general, I think, had issues with the lead singer. Yeah. But first of all, what did you think about Oasis as a band? What are your thoughts behind that?
I love Oasis, but I think Wonderwall's ridiculously overrated.
Yeah.
I think that's probably one of the weakest tracks on the album. But yeah, I love Oasis.
And what I was just pointing to specifically, or what I wanted to mention, was, you know, Liam Gallagher was kind of that ego within the band. But in a way, it also helped the band sometimes, because you had someone who was just out there, you know, and just, you know, obviously the band wouldn't have liked it, but, you know, that kind of attitude appealed to me in the music. I thought it came across sometimes. Is that hard to manage, egos within a band?
Yeah, it can be for the start of it, but I think after a while because, you know, in music you always get that sort of thing. I've got the philosophy that
Yeah.
with musicians, you've either got people who are absolutely amazing individuals in terms of their personality, or absolute just knobs. Like,
Yeah.
no other way to describe them, really. Like, when our band started out, there was a lot of butting heads between me and the bassist. There was still a lot of weird stuff going on there, but that's all kind of under the bridge now, which is good. But yeah, egos can be quite impeding until you sort of learn how to deal with it. Because, you know, yeah, like I was saying, in music, that's always going to happen. Like, you're always gonna have that sort of problem. No one gets out of that. So you just got to learn how to manage it and sort of figure out how to compromise and know what to do to sort of appease that ego.
And with the basis that you mentioned, what specifically was the resolution there? How did you get to a point where you found common ground within the music you were trying to create?
To be honest, I don't really think we did. I think we just
let it go.
Yeah, like we just, you know, spend a night arguing like mad, and then I think, I don't know, one of us would just be like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. No, I don't think we generally came to many compromises.
Yeah. Do you like having those debates though, or would you rather not have them?
I'd rather not have them, but at the same time, I think they're quite valuable to the process, because I think just for the experience, like, obviously, you know, you'd rather have a band where everyone gets along and agrees on everything, but that's never going to happen. So I think, yeah, the more it happens, the better, because you become more able to deal with it.
Because with Coldplay, they were apparently, well, the media was saying they were at a point one time where they could have split up because they had, you know, kind of different views about music. But when you look at them from the outside, you know, they're English, so they're very, you know, mild-mannered, and it's hard to see. But it must just be, because you're trying to create really good music, you know, that emphasis kind of can create tension within a band sometimes. At the moment with Vulture State, is the dynamic quite good at the moment?
Yeah, the dynamic's really good at the moment.
Yeah,
better than it was for a while, I think. We're all much more agreeable than we were a year ago.
Was the bassist you mentioned still there in the band?
Yeah, he's still there. It's a lot easier to deal with, though. I think. Yeah.
With like the music you create as well, if you have just like a disagreement about a lyric or just some sort of sound, like what do you actually do? Do you just point out to them and just say, hey, this is not good enough? Like what happens? Or because, like, say you told me that you're one of the main songwriters in the band. Have you ever had I assume that there would be agreements, but there would also be disagreements. Like how like, can you give me any specific examples of how that would work?
Generally, I haven't had any issues with lyrics. I don't think there's ever been a point when anyone said, I think this line is bad, or like, you know, I don't think you should write this. Generally, the lyrics always get accepted. But in terms of the singing, sometimes that can be... Yeah, there's one song we've got where... This is Humanity again, actually. I don't know, there was something I was doing in the chorus of, like, singing it, and Lockie was just like, I don't think you should do that. And I was like, duly noted. Didn't do it again. And the same thing happened with the song we wrote last practice on Monday night. There was, like, a section where I'd start sort of, like, you know, screaming and such, and both Lockie and Brendan were kind of like, 50-50 on it. And so I played the recording for a couple of other people and went like, what do you think of that? And they were all like, And so I was like, yeah, I won't do it. Yeah. So, yeah.
And with music, is it an obsession for you, or is it a passion? Because I think another band that I appreciate, Muse, the band Muse, the lead singer, I forgot his name. Matt Bellamy. He noted that all he thinks about every single day is music. He just has music. And sometimes you hear of artists say that they're just gifted with hearing getting a song inside their head and just going with it. Do you have that gift of, you know, just having music which comes subconsciously and just writing it, or is it quite a hard process?
Depends on the day.
Depends on the day.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, at a random point, I think some of my best songs are written when just out of nowhere, some random lyric just popped in my head, and I'm like, that's alright, write that out, and then it just flew from there, and like within an hour I had a song written, and then that's like one of the ones that everyone sort of reacted best to. And at the same time, there have been times when I've just sort of sat there trying to write a song, spent like 4 hours staring at this piece of paper trying to write it, finally get something out, and it's just like, nah, I'm gonna scrap it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the same goes for melodies. So yeah, sometimes that happens, but yeah, it's not like all the time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And with music in, you know, cinema, do you think that's an underrated aspect of film, just like the music in general?
Yeah, definitely. I realised that last year, I think. I saw the entire Lord of the Rings extended edition trilogy at the Astor Theatre, and during all the intermissions, I was just realising how effective those scores were, you know, like they actually were making me emotional watching it, and I was like, yeah. And from that point onwards, I realised just how important the score is in a film. Mm-hmm. It can do so much for it. I think music's definitely underrated in film.
Mm-hmm. And who was the musician behind the Lord of the Rings series? Was it?
What's his name? Howard Shore, I think his name is. Mm-hmm. I hope I'm right about that. But yeah,
because they're quite long movies. Like they go for in compared to a traditional film. So the music would have to be kind of interspersed throughout the movie. I'm not sure. Do you know how the music worked in that movie in particular?
Not entirely. I don't have a very in-depth knowledge of sound in films, but I don't know. I think they just write different sort of you know, songs and sounds for the different sort of moods that happen in the film. I think they get, you know, given the thing and told what sort of sound to make, and then the composer takes over from there and figures out roughly what he wants. The director tells him whether it's good or not. I'm not entirely sure. That's a guess. Mm-hmm. But yeah, what I admired in Lord of the Rings is how in all of those different things, you know, no matter what the scene was, it could be, you know, the music could be really ominous and grim, or it could be really, you know, happy and cheerful. But there's the same melody that tends to appear in like all the different songs, which is from like the like the song that plays at the very start of the film. Mm-hmm. And like that always gets me because they've done it so geniusly that sort of little bit, just a few notes in a row, is always done sort of when they're reflecting back on home and the Shire. And when it plays is when, you know, Bilbo introduces the Shire to the audience and like talks about it. And so I think it's amazing how they use music to convey something like that, you know. Mm-hmm. It's sort of, you know, calling back to home, even when they're miles away in Mordor, like in the middle of, you know, something really grim and awful, and, you know, they're on like the edge of death. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like that'll play, and it's sort of, it's so hopeful. Uh-huh. It's like, you know, the Shire never left them. Mm-hmm. It's I don't know, it's really weird, but yeah, I think that was genius.
Mm-hmm. Me myself, I'm not. I've watched Lord of the Rings, but I wasn't like a keen observer of it. But something like even like Harry Potter as well, like the music within that kind of sets the tone. Yeah. As well, you know, the Philosopher's Stone. You know, generally, I think the same music is applied to most of the movies. But yeah, but that's you know, Lord of the Rings, whatever. That just gives you a perspective of how important music is, not just by itself, but with other, you know, components.
Yeah, definitely.
As well. Will that be a goal of yours to maybe one day have your music in like a movie or a feature film, or just are you just more into that process of just, you know, creating music within a band?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a goal. It would be really great. Like, I think just because, you know, obviously you've gotten to that point when people find your music, because if your music's being used in a film, it means that the person making the film, you know, obviously really likes that song, and it's sort of spoken to them on some level for them to feel the need to include it in their film. Yeah. Even if it's just, the song would sound really good to the image of someone running, like, it's still cool that that's what's popped into their head. But it's not a goal though. Like, that's not something I've really thought about. Yeah, I think my primary goal is purely just, continuing to do what I'm doing, play a bunch of live shows, have like, I think the maximum amount of fame that I'm looking for is a sort of group of fans, a decent fan base, perhaps international, but not mainstream, like just people who like follow the band and have looked into it themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the Smith Street Band.
It sounds familiar. I can't relate to them now, but yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say about them?
Well, they're a few Melbourne boys, and they started out about 5 years ago, and they've got a massive following now, but not in the mainstream. Obviously, not all that many people have heard of them, and yet they've got a lot of people who know them, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So, like, they've got people over in America. They're doing a US tour soon, so they've definitely got fans all over the world, and yet, like, in none of those countries would, like, a generic person know who they are, and yet they've got so many fans once you sort of delve deeper into the scene.
So how do they advertise their music to get to that place?
I think it's the independent labels. I think independent labels.
So they were
really
like signed, yeah.
Yeah, I'd sign to an independent label as well, though. I think they're really good for music, because the problem with major labels is they sort of sucked all the art out of music. It's purely a money-making game for them, just like a business. It's just like making clothes or doing anything else, and I think that's really sad, because music's a art. It's meant to be a form of expressing yourself and your emotions, and even if it's punk music, you're still expressing your emotions. And so, I think it's really sad looking at what mainstream music is today, and where all that they care about is how much money they can make out of an artist. Yeah,
I agree, because it just goes against, what music's about. I mean, I'm not a musician, but I really appreciate the creativity involved, and just the effort that the artists have to go through, an introspection, subjectivity as well, just all those qualities. One thing I wanted to ask you was, in your band Vulture State, do you all have the same political views?
That one's interesting. I don't think we really disagree on many views, but I think I'm the only member who's that passionate about them. Like, I'm pretty much the only one who writes any songs that are about political beliefs. I think at the moment I'm the only one who's written any songs to begin with, but in terms of lyrics anyway. Like, obviously, like I was saying, music, we all contribute. But, yeah. I know that Lockie, he agrees with me. He just doesn't have, like, the same sort of passion, Like, it's not that I hate this, it's that I understand that this is bad. I just don't really care that much about it. He's, like, self-confessed, apathetic. Brendan seems to care a lot about the issues. I think he's getting more of a social conscience this year than he had last year. But yeah, I don't know about Josh. I haven't really spoken to him about that sort of thing. Like I said, he hasn't really been a part of the band for long. But yeah, I think I'm the only one who's really that, passionate and energetic about politics and social issues.
And because you told me at the start that some of the things that you write about are kind of, or some of the things you think you write about are kind of, factual based as opposed to really biased. So what types of factual things do you write in your music are conveyed? Like, or could you give me an example?
Well, I think it's just a matter of, like, my opinions to me just seem really, obviously factual, if you know what I mean. Like, if you look at the facts and stats. So there's like, This Is Humanity, where it's talking about how, Australia doesn't really appreciate, or not even appreciate, like, have any acceptance or tolerance for refugees, and just, keeps them locked up in inhumane, pretty much criminal conditions. Obviously, that's not a lie. Like, that's just a
that's
thing.
A fact, yeah.
Like, they're being mistreated. There are people who believe that that's necessary. There are people who think it's not. But I think there was a speaker at the rally I went to in Melton who said something that really sort of struck me, and he said the facts have a left-wing bias, which I think is interesting. It's like everyone looks at issues in terms of, like, all sides have to be addressed and equally respected, and you get to a point where you think, well, do they? Like, if someone's placing their own financial stability, despite the fact that they're very well off already, in front of another human being's, life and welfare, does that deserve to be really listened to? And, like, when the fascists get their right to march, then they're clearly saying that the leader of the United Patriots Front, which is one of the main right-wing organisations at the moment that we fight against, he was quoted to have said that we need a picture of Adolf Hitler in every classroom and an issue of Mein Kampf issued to every student.
Yeah.
And it's like, see, why do they... Like, I understand that anyone has the right to rally as long as it's not, like, directly inciting violence, but I personally believe that that needs to be sort of looked at and cracked down on what actually is inciting violence.
Could I ask you a blunt question?
Yeah.
Why do you bother then to argue against them if they're that ridiculous?
That's actually a really good question. I think it's mainly not as much trying to change their minds as much as it's showing everyone that they're not the majority, if you know what I mean. So, like, the reason we went to Melton, it was originally meant to be outside Parliament House, but then they scarpered when they found out that there was a counter rally happening, and they went to Melton. But the point is to show, you know, it's pretty much just to raise awareness and show, like, look, no, you're outnumbered, you're never going to win here. And when they went to Melton, which is a very diverse area, if you actually go there, like, there's a lot of minorities living there, but there's also a very strong sort of racist sentiment in the area. And so when we went out there, we were mostly, like, in terms of locality, we were mostly opposed, like, not people who are organised, but even just people on the street were sort of gathering to abuse us. And we were facing down against people who weren't even a part of the other rally. They were on our side of the police lines, but they were against us, and it was pretty ridiculous and pretty dangerous. But yeah, it's basically just to show the minorities in that area, like, look, yeah, I know that there's all these people who want you dead, but there's twice the amount on the other side who are, like, you know, supporting your rights. You know, we, like, accept you. You know, you're not. It's not just Australia that's racist and hates all coloured people.
No, I think that's a very noble cause, and I commend you and your band for writing or raising awareness. One comparative example which comes to mind is kind of the religious and secular debate that people can have sometimes. So, you know, it was commonly accepted, that, you know, I'm not arguing against, you know, if people believe in God, that's fine. But sometimes people who believed in, you know, a higher power would, you know, criticize those who didn't. And I think, you know, but the secularists, like, you know, Richard Dawkins and stuff, they kind of try and do what you do in the sense that, you know, they're trying to just raise awareness about it and not persuade. Or are you trying to persuade?
Persuasion is a part of it.
Yeah.
Like, I do like the idea of... That's another one of my goals, actually. If the band were to gain any sort of fame, it'd be because I'd love to, even for, like, one person to hear the music and actually sort of, whether it's change their mind or just start to form an opinion, you know? Like, not just to keep singing to people who already agree with me, but to have people listen and go, that's true. And sort of develop an opinion based on hearing our music, like Rage Against the Machine did to me when I was 15. So, yeah, there is persuasion, but... Yeah, in terms of, like, the physical action against fascists and all the anti-fascist stuff, it's not as much to change their minds because they're pretty set in their ways.
No, yeah, they're set in stone. Yeah. So, do you have any remorse for the not the fascist beliefs, but how they got into that position?
Definitely. Like, I think,
Because some of it, you know, I'm not, you know, the police, you know, the Adolf Hitler example you brought up was, you know, quite horrible. So I'm glad, you know, your music is, you know, campaigning against that. But one thing I noticed that sometimes, you know, racism and stuff, as much as it can be self-motivated, can also be inherited.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that?
No, yeah, that's definitely true. There are so many kids who get indoctrinated into that whole belief. Like, there's a Louis Theroux special where, you know, he focuses on neo-Nazis in America, and he looked into these families. You know, there's just little kids being, you know, taught to Sieg Heil and all these other things. You know, they're being read Mein Kampf, so you really can't blame them. But I think to a certain degree, everyone has to be held accountable for their beliefs. So, like, I feel bad for a lot of them who sort of get wrapped up in that whole thing. But surely there's got to be some point in your life when
you can make your own mind. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I definitely sympathise with how they got into it. Like there are other people who just decide, you know what, nah, I hate refugees and I'm going to be a Nazi now. But I think, there's definitely got to be a lot of attention paid to the fact that some of them don't choose to enter that thing. They're bred into it.
Mm-hmm. And so with your kind of left-wing ideals with your music, was that an inherited thing, or was that something you developed?
That's definitely something I developed. My parents are both quite conservative. So, I didn't really have that sort of upbringing into, left-wing ideals or anything like that. I had to pretty much find it for myself. So, it all pretty much started when I bought that Rage CD in Year 9. Before then, I wasn't too socially conscious about anything. Yeah,
and I think that's, a message to, anyone, whatever, like if you're a fascist or whatever, that there's a point in your life, where you can make up your own beliefs, and some beliefs are so ridiculous. Why do you, believe in them? Like the Adolf Hitler example, there's many others, but no, I commend you and your band for writing against it.
Thank you.
So I believe, Jude, you would like to play a song
for definitely.
Us.
Sure.
So this is just my duty as part of SYN Media to. So does your song contain swearing?
Yes.
Yeah. How long does it go for?
I'm not sure exactly. It's about 4 to 5 minutes.
Okay. So if you don't want to, so this is just part of my role. I have to do this. Just issue a language warning. If you don't want to hear this, then you can turn off the podcast, or you can not listen to it. Or I think we're going to end it with the music anyway. So if you don't want to listen to it, just shut off like now. While you're doing it, I'll get the camera in a nice viewpoint.
Okay.
And but you can start playing whenever you want. Is the microphone all good?
I think so. I accidentally snapped it out of the stand, but it should be right now.
I'll just you can start playing whenever you want. I'll just get the camera.
Okay. I knew would occur. I observed from the edge of the deck, and it serves to remind me of stupid decisions and plans. My subconscious design is thrust into my hands, extracting words that will match the sensations of sharpening through a state of intoxication. I know I'm down, and I'm not going to fix it. I speak of the devil, but I still won't risk it. Regardless of what people say, it's a coping that's hard. It's to stay isolated, a drink in your hand, and envy the people whose lives when it's planned. I'm fucking pissed off, and I don't have a right to be according to myself and my own philosophy. Now I'm in pain, but that's all on me. Who else is to blame for my own misery? So I'll head back to the gutter and get kicked in the head and pissed on by everyone. Maybe it's just raining, maybe it's a dream. I'll let my paranoia and these violent shakes lull me to sleep. These violent shakes lull me to sleep. Changer of seasons, not that it matters. I'll drink it all anyway, just to say fuck you to all that went down today. My party talk about self-harm and depression, enhances the hopelessness, doubt and aggression that seems to come daily in increasing doses, cause when one door opens another one closes. And I'll head back to the gutter and get kicked in the head and pissed on by everyone. That maybe it's just raining, maybe it's a dream. I'll let my paranoia and these violent shakes lull me to sleep. crowd and just feel more depressed, or at home be alone and just feel more depressed. I'm not sure I can take it, my lifelines are gone, so I suffer in silence like I've done for so long. It makes complete sense, I'm so fucking confused, and I'll tell myself that, leave my ego diseased. But saying it is one thing, believing another, that someday I'll get to say at least we have each other. So I'll head back to the gutter and get kicked in the head and pissed on by everyone. Maybe it's just raining, maybe it's a dream. I'll let my paranoia and these violent shakes lull me to sleep. These violent shakes lull me to sleep. So I'll head back to the gutter and get kicked in the head and pissed on by everyone. But maybe it's just raining, maybe it's a dream. I'll let my paranoia and these violent shakes lull me to sleep.